You check the sound on the mic.
Okay.
Rhonda, let me know about the sound.
Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April, and can't hear. Ah, that sounds better. Can you all hear? Oh, I have to kiss it.
You have to kiss it.
I have to kiss the mic. Very good. Thank you. Better? Better, people? Okay.
Sound good?
I was at first, not with these people, asked to told to eat the mic. And they said, no, kiss the mic. So remember that. And when you can't hear, and I'll get the idea. Okay. And thank you so much to June and Rhonda, our technical. Yes. Let's hear it. This is their first, attempt to do more than you'd think they're doing. They make it look easy. All right. The League of Women Voters of Lane County welcomes you to our League Speaker Series, formerly known as Third Thursday. Third Thursday didn't mean anything. It was just a date. And so we found out recently that League Speaker Series doesn't help a whole lot either, but it's more accurate. I'm Charles C. Kaler, current president of League of Women Voters of Lane County. Welcome to you all. Thanks for coming. We acknowledge we live on the traditional land of the Kalapuya people, whose descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon. We honor the land and the people who have cared for it and reaffirm our commitment to steward and honor the land through our work. It's been a busy few months in the League. Most notably, it appears we were able to thwart a possible attempt by some on the Lane Board of Commissioners who apparently wanted to redo the carefully and fairly crafted district maps. And thanks to the effort of Linda Lynch, who's been on them via the League to actually redistrict in a careful and fair manner, it got done. But the two new commissioners and then the chair decided maybe it ought to be reconsidered. So the League board wrote a letter and commented in person to the commissioners discouraging such a move and encouraged League members to do the same. On Tuesday, after a brief discussion, the commissioners dropped the idea. It worked. See what the League can do? We are part of the effort to make sure people pick their politicians, not the other way around. Thanks to all those who worked on that effort. Thank you. Okay, now on to the presentation. After the presentation, we ask that you legibly write your question on the cards at your table, and I'll read them. Many League members get more opportunity than others to talk about politics. Today's speakers will give us pointers about how to talk to that son-in-law at Thanksgiving, or the woman grocery clerk this morning. Braver Angels is a national movement that understands in order to bridge the partisan divide, we must find common ground where it exists. Besides his work with Braver Angels, Luke Grossmiller works for the Lane County Diversion Program, which provides folks charged with crimes opportunities to discuss the impacts of their actions and create a plan to address them. A League member, Mary Miller, is a nonprofit consultant and a longtime mediator trainer. Both seem perfect fits for the work they do for Braver Angels. Welcome, Braver Angels. You're up. Oh, is that good? Is it going a little bit? There you go. Okay.
No, we went higher, right?
Definitely need it higher for Luke. Okay. Be fine. Thank you, Charlie.
I don't like that man. I should get to know him better. Does anyone know who's responsible for that quote? It's one of the lesser known quotes of Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so thank you for introducing us, Charlie. We're happy to be here. And I'm going to hand over to Luke to share a little bit with you about how Braver Angels got started, why it got started, and then we'll be swapping around a little bit in this presentation. Okay?
Thanks, Mary. I'm going to try the other mic. Does this one work? Oh, good. So I'm Luke. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk to you today. I think the quote by Abraham Lincoln, I don't like that man, I should get to know him, is a very powerful way of showing up in the world. And it is the spirit of Braver Angels. We're really seeking to cultivate relationships with other people. And this is a time in the world where I think maybe, I don't know about you, but has anybody in this room noticed some polarization going on in the country? So this guy up here lived in pretty polarized times too. So we have a lot of knowledge to fall back on as we move forward with these challenges. There's a cost to society of polarization. I think we all feel it, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. Mary's going to talk more about Braver Angels and the different workshops and opportunities happening with Braver Angels and things starting up here in Lane County. So polarization is a basic concept of when things go to different sides of the spectrum. So sometimes we have a disagreement in ideas. Braver Angels doesn't seek to limit disagreement or diversity of opinion, but what Braver Angels really focuses on is effective polarization. That's how we feel about each other. So if you see someone like Mary was looking at me and saying, I don't like that guy, that's effective polarization. And this labeling, when we see someone, we feel afraid, we feel like maybe they're the enemy. This is what Braver Angels is trying to address and remind us that we're all humans, we all have the same needs. Some studies over the past decades have shown that polarization has been increasing, the effect of polarization, especially in our own party politically, has been roughly the same, or maybe we feel a little bit more inclined toward our party, But what really stands out is our views of the other party have gotten a lot worse. Also, you've probably noticed the siloing of information, the being cut off from people who have different views. It's very common, probably in this group, for people to have some similar political views. And so the more this happens, the less we understand other folks. And the more this kind of polarization continues to deepen, the more we might tend to sacrifice our own values or compromise our values because the stakes feel so high. Becoming unwilling to admit our own faults. Again, this is a real loss for us, because how do we start to question our own ideas and our own biases if we're only listening to people that think like us? So at this point, Mary, would you come up and share the good news about what Braver Angels is trying to do to address this effective polarization that's been tearing us apart?
Thanks, Luke. Just want to see. Okay, so this is where we go. So we have much more in common than we think. And there was a day, there were days in the past when we could actually disagree with each other. We could argue with each other, but still in a very respectful way. And then we worked together to find common ground so that we could work from there to come up with solutions. And this is what Braver Angels is all about. It's about finding common ground, even though we may have differences of opinion. So we're here, Braver Angels is here to bring Americans together to cross the partisan divide. That is our mission, to cross the partisan divide. Now, one of the things that I think that we need to be aware of, Luke spoke about affective polarization. We don't think in those terms a lot. And that's about, you know, I just want to keep reminding of, that's about how do we feel about the person who disagrees with us? How do we feel? What are the labels we place on them? Emotionally, how do we feel about them? And over the last decades, that's got considerably worse, as Luke pointed out. So one of the tenets of Braver Angels is that we are not trying to persuade the other person of our point of view. That's not the major tenet of Braver Angels. What we are trying to do is to better understand why they think the way they do. So think about when you last had a political discussion with someone that you disagreed with. And they might say something, and what would be the next words out of your mouth? Instinctively, like impulsively. What was that? On the other hand, or yes, but. So what we're trying to do at Brave Angels, instead of jumping to the yes, but, we come from questions of curiosity. So we, instead of saying, you know, trying to give them our point of view, and we have a way of doing that within Braver Angels, but it comes after we have done a lot of listening. So first of all, we want to listen to them because they're much more likely to be willing to listen to us if we have listened to them first, and that we've clarified with them what they're saying. And if we have tried to dig a little deeper to find out, how did you come to think, come to this way of thinking about this particular issue? You know, what influenced you to think that way? So so very important. We're trying to understand the other's point of view. And if you ever become involved with Braver Angels, it's important to remember that it's not a forum for trying to debate the other person and tell them how wrong they are. That's not what we're all about. So we engage with those we disagree with so we can find common ground. Now, in Braver Angels, you're going to hear these words red and blue, okay? Red means someone who leans conservative or libertarian. Blue means someone who leans progressive or liberal. And we say lean because we're not always blue on all issues and not all red on all issues, but mostly, do we mostly vote Democrat or do we mostly vote Republican? And that's the lean blue or lean red question there. We also have people who are purple, but we'll Angel Think Translate chapter. Okay, we have a statewide Oregon Alliance. They're very active, and we have a red coordinator and a blue coordinator. So, and we're in almost every state, and every state has a red coordinator and a blue coordinator. We also have alliances in Klamath Falls and in Grants Pass. And we're trying to get something off the ground here in the Lane County area. But we can't do that until we have a balance of red and blue. So right through the organization, there's red and blue leaderships. Now, I have to be transparent and tell you that's not the case for the membership. Which type of person do you think gets more attracted to these sorts of organizations? Yeah, so we have far more blues in the organization as members than we do reds. But we're working really hard to create more of a balance, and we as an alliance could not get off the ground here. We have a small committee of about 8 people trying to do work here in the Lane County area, and we have only 1 registered Republican in our committee of 8 at this point. So we're working to increase that and then eventually become an alliance. So red and blue leaders, the leadership is equally represented. The funding sources also, we have to be really careful where our funding grants come from. They have to come from sources that are not perceived, well, maybe perceived as red, but then we have to get a grant, an equivalent grant, a grant from an organization that would be a foundation that might be perceived as blue, or a person. Sometimes there are individual contributors that give significant amounts. I do also want to say that Braver Angels do get a lot of individual donations as well. So that's just to give you an idea of some of the differences between Braver Angels and some of the other organizations. We strive to be an organization that represents the country. So the diversity of the country. So we have special groups in Braver Angels. We have Angels of Color, which are people of color who form their own little group within Braver Angels. They still participate in everything else, but they're looking at the issues within Braver Angels that impact them and how they can help Braver Angels be more sensitive to some of those issues. We have a Working People's Project, which is for people who don't have a formal education or don't have a 4-year degree. And so they're a group on their own, also looking at how can Braver Angels better serve us, or this group of people, and how can we help them? And then we have the Red Caucus, because there's not, we have a minority of Reds in the organization. We have a Red Caucus where they are really doing a great job of reaching out and trying to get other Reds to join the organization. And they also, again, there are issues that come up for them. So it's a very interesting organization, Braver Angels. It's a very flat organization. It's volunteer driven, it's grassroots driven. There are a few paid people, a few paid positions, but that's a very small minority of the people in the organization. I'm going to think around 20 people for the entire Braver Angels membership. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we began. So the first the nonprofit was formed in 2016 or 2017. I think 2017 actually, but right after the 2016 election, a couple of people three people, actually, 2 reds and 1 blue. Those are our founders. The 3 founders are 2 reds and 1 blue. And they came together and said, we got to do something about this terrible polarization now that Trump's been elected. And so they brought together in Ohio, in a small town in Ohio, they brought together, I believe it was 8 or 10 people who voted for Trump and 8 or 10 people who voted for Hillary Clinton. And they brought them together for a weekend. And when they first walked in the room, you can imagine what it was like. They barely looked at each other, let alone talk to each other. But one of the founders is a very well-known national marriage therapist. And a lot of the workshops that Braver Angels does is based on actually marriage counseling, bringing people together. And so he has been the chief, so to speak, in terms of developing the workshops. His name is Bill Dougherty. So can you see? This is a photograph that was taken at the end of the weekend. I think that is Bill Dougherty. I'm not 100% sure. But if you look at the faces, and just remember that half of those people were Trump voters and half of those people were Clinton voters, and look at them together in this group photograph. Sort of nice to see, isn't it? Yeah. So just very quickly, so that was the first red-blue workshop right after the election. We begin to grow. Now there was no virtual workshops of this. There's little groups of people forming around the country. Everyone met in person at that point in time. And so alliances were being formed around the country. Then we got sort of a more formal structure as we got bigger and more expansion. And then in 2020, around pandemic time, there was an explosive growth. And I think it's probably due to the fact that we had never done virtual workshops before. And because people couldn't meet anymore, we were forced to do virtual workshops. So we started to organize national workshops, take our workshops and turn them into a virtual format. And we did that very quickly. So I'm pretty proud of how quickly they did that. This means that people from anywhere geographically could attend a workshop. And so that's really helped the explosive growth. And I'm actually, one of the things I do for Braver Angels is I help organize some of those national workshops, the virtual workshops, as well as trying to get an alliance off the ground here. And then now that the pandemic is sort of over, we are now wanting to meet more in person. And the beauty of meeting in person is that, you know, if you can get people in your own community together, you know, people that you work with, people you go to church with, people you interact with, people who are your neighbors, that's where you want to be able to talk to these people. This is your community. So it makes a lot of sense to be doing things locally again. We'll never stop the virtual. We're still going to keep that going because there are some parts of the country that there are no alliances. But we're also meeting more and more frequently now in person. So just to let you know about that. Oh, in 2022, and this is very new, we have actually moved into the legislative area, and we are working with legislators, both red and blue legislators. Sometimes their whole teams will come together. A Republican team representative and all their team, their staff, will come together with a Democratic representative and that person's staff. And we're just getting off the ground on this, but we've had a few workshops around that. So, the person that you see here, these two people are Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, and Representative Dusty Johnson, who's a Republican from South Dakota. And they are some of our biggest fans. So we're getting into the actual politics as well. We're trying to reach people at all levels. We work with legislators and their staffs with the goal of increased trust and connecting citizens and coming up, of course, with solutions. So grow bravely, pair up bravely, experience bravely. So let's look a little bit more at that. So we do have conversation workshops. I call them structured dialogue workshops, where we bring together an equal number of reds and blues. And everyone wants, anybody gets excited about this wants to start that one right away. Let's do a red-blue workshop. Get the reds together and the blues together, and they have to be equal numbers. So it's usually somewhere between 6 and 10 reds and 6 and 10 blues for one of those workshops. Now, in addition to those people who will be speaking for their point of view, there will also be a lot of observers. So we could have twice as many observers as that, or 3 times as many observers as that. And they also are observing the whole process and learning from the process. And in a red-blue workshop, just very briefly, the blues go into a breakout room, the reds go into their breakout room, and they come up with if you were a blue, how do the reds see us? What are some of the things they say about us? What are some of the, how would they label us? And they write all that down. And then they say, okay, so how much truth is there in any of these? Okay, maybe there's a bit of truth in some of those. Let's have a look at that. And the reds are doing the same. Okay, and then they come back together and they start to look at the perspectives of each other, and then they work out together how, what can they both agree on that. Now, that's just a very brief overview. It's much deeper than that, the red-blue workshop, but just to give you an idea. Now, the common ground workshop is where we do a deep dive into one particular topic. Could be abortion, could be election integrity. It could be a local issue. If it's not a virtual workshop, it could be something locally that's going on here that's very controversial. And we have people who are pro and people who are con the issue, and we bring them together, much the same process, to try and identify. We need to have between 6 and 10 reds and 6 and 10, well, 6 and 10 people for and 6 and 10 people against that particular issue. And it's a structured dialogue with moderators that are trained by Braver Angels. You have to be a moderator, you have to go through their training, and they're all volunteers. All the moderators are volunteers. It's pretty remarkable, actually. So that gives you an idea of some of the structured workshops. We also have skills training workshops, and this is where I always want people to start. Before you jump in and, quickly, let's get together and let's, sit down and have a conversation with somebody with a differing, political view. You better learn the skills how to do that. So we have skills building workshops. We have a workshop called Skills for Bridging the Divide. We have a workshop called Depolarizing Within, which is my favorite workshop because it forces you to look at yourself and see how you are viewing the other side. And what are the labels you are putting on the other side? And is that really helpful to respectful and civilized conversations? So that's the first part of that workshop, is looking at yourself and going within. It's a very powerful workshop. And the second half of the workshop is, how do you intervene if you're a red and you're talking to other reds and you hear them say, putting down blues and labeling blues in very negative labels? How do you intervene and just say, hey, look, maybe there's another way to look at this. Maybe, these are our neighbors, whatever. Let's have a look at what they might be doing here. And the same with blues, talking to blues. So you intervene with people that actually think like you. But this labeling and particularly this negative labeling and this language of war. Have you heard, we've got to defeat this and we've got to fight for this and we've got to, what some of the other language, but you view them as the enemy. That didn't used to be the case way back when. It's happened in the last 30 years, this affective polarization, and it's not helped at all by the language that we use. So the language we use is really important. And right before Thanksgiving at the UU Church, our little committee did hold a workshop on families and politics, an in-person workshop. We had 28 people attend, and it was all about how do you talk to somebody else in your family about who thinks differently than you do about politics. So that's we've actually done one workshop, even though we're not an alliance yet. So families and policy, usually we hold those workshops right before Thanksgiving and Christmas. We have depolarizing conversations about race is another workshop. And these are all skills building workshops, developing the skills, okay. So you can have those other structured dialogue workshop conversations. There's also a workshop on being red in a blue environment and being blue in a red environment. So those are being held in different parts of the country as well. So if we got enough reds around, we could say, what's it like being a red in a blue environment here in Eugene? So gives you a bit of an idea. So we have one-on-one conversations. Sometimes there are programs where we can pair up with somebody, maybe on the other side of the country, maybe not, who has a different political point than us, or we might be city people, they might be rural people. We have different needs, okay? I was paired up with a woman who at that time was the executive director of a faith-based organization, which was pro-life, a pro-life faith-based organization. And she lives in Bakersville, California. And as you know, I don't know if you know this, but it's a very conservative enclave within California. And it's actually where Kevin McCarthy comes from. And so we became the really good friends. We had wonderful conversations, and we don't always agree, but and just because we're not trying to convince each other of each other's point of view, we're just trying to understand better. See, people's opinions do shift. They do shift. So that's a byproduct of what we're trying to do, but it's not the goal of Braver Angels. We have a whole debate arena. It's slightly different. I don't know a lot about them yet, but they do. I'm more involved in the workshop arena, but the debates have been going for a long time. They're more structured debates, a little bit different from what you might have had in high school or college or something. And they're very active. We also have a lot of outreach on the campuses. So college campuses, Braver Angels is in a lot of college campuses. And we've just started a program actually for teenagers in high schools. So just to give you an idea that we're a very flat organization, non-hierarchical for the most part, and a lot of different fingers going out in different directions, like an octopus, almost like that. And you know, we've got the branch now that's working with legislators at any level. So I think at this point, I'm going to hand back to Luke. So here you go.
Super. So wrapping up here, doing all this work to depolarize myself, I noticed just yesterday going to Along Came Trudy's in Springfield. There's a cafe with some conservative-minded people, and going to talk to a couple of them, and just kind of immediately sticking my, foot in my mouth with the yes, but. So this is hard work. And I know the people in this room probably know that and have been working hard to communicate with people of different perspectives. But Braver Angels supports us in that, brings us together, gives us a safe, fair playing field and container, and it really helps a lot. So the results of doing this work, as you might imagine, are we reduce effective polarization. After taking a Braver Angels workshop, 70–80% of people say they do understand the other side better, and they feel better about them as people. The red-blue workshop, that's the one with the smiling Trump and Clinton supporters, the picture you saw. 85% of people say they feel less estranged or angry with the others. 87% gain significant understanding. 91% see areas of commonality. So there's some results. A non-Braver Angels study finds a similar thing. When we take the time to understand each other and understand why people feel the way they do, we start naturally empathizing with them. Again, the goal is not to change other people's views. It's kind of Gotta take a back step sometimes. We want to change the way we feel about each other, which has that sometimes positive benefit of actually influencing each other's views. And when we do feel like trust and a sense of warmth towards one another, we're able to work better together and collaborate to meet all our needs. So if you'll imagine with me a world where people are taking these steps to connect with each other, do the personal work and communicate and ask for understanding rather than changing each other's perspective, what kind of world we can create together doing this. Guess we'll wrap up.
All right, so before we close today, I want to extend an invitation for you to take on a little exercise, and you can accept or decline the invitation. But let's go to questions first. I do want to point out to you that there is a flyer on your table. There should be one for each of you. We'll get some on your table. Sorry, Charlie. Yes, and there is also a pad on your table. And if you are interested in being kept kept informed as to what we are doing here in the Lane County area, please put down your name and email address. If you are interested in keeping informed, you may want to get involved too, that's fine. You can talk to Luke or myself, but you know, if you just want to hear what's going on and maybe want to be notified of the next workshop that we might be holding in this area, please put down your name and email address. This is separate from the joining Braver Angels National. By the way, to become a volunteer within the organization, for anyone who takes on a volunteer role, you have to become a member, and the membership fee is $12 a year, $1 a month. We try to keep it easy. And all the workshops are free. You do not have to be a member to come to a workshop or anything like that. It's only if you take on a volunteer position. And so that's just to give you an idea of if you want to stay informed of what we're doing, please let us know. Take the flyers. If you think of anyone else who might be interested in a flyer, that would be great too. Questions? We're going to do that.
While they're going to write their questions on 3 by 5, I will read them and y'all will answer them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sure. By the way, at the end of the flyer, the bottom of the flyer in yellow is my contact information as well.
And she's a member, so you can find her in the directory.
Yeah, I'm in your directory.
Yeah, that's what we put all that work in for. So, ooh, thanks. Can you name a few other agencies that are working with the same model orientation to their work? Did you get that?
Yeah. They're not, well.
They want you in the camera. Yes.
Okay. And other bipartisan groups are Essential Partners is another group. One is Living Room Conversations. They're not using the same model as we are, though. But there are different organizations trying to do cross the divide in various ways, and particularly political. Our lane, Braver Angels Lane, is politics. That's what we are. We're bridging the divide in politics. Okay.
Okay. This is a tough one, I think, too. Is your group able to reach out to those who have been hopelessly drawn into what many of us see as a cult?
We have Trump supporters in Braver Angels. We would probably try to reframe the word cult to a more neutral word. And so, yes, we do try to reach out. We went, as Luke told you, we have been hanging out a couple of times at Along Came Trudy Cafe. We went to some of us went to the Republican monthly meeting last month, and we're going to continue to go to some of those. So we are looking at, and there's a couple of churches that we are making connections with that have conservative audiences. So we are trying to reach out in that way.
Okay, Lane County has many conservative voters who are libertarian, independent, or no party registries, whatever. Anyway, can this group be tapped?
Can I just have that? Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah. I looked into, well, that's the, that's why we went to the, okay. Oh, that, okay. Yes, well, that's why we're going to the Republican Party monthly meetings. We're not, our goal ultimately is to talk to the powers that be in there about doing a little mini presentation to them. But we basically right now just want to form relationships, have them get to know our faces, talk to us. We talk about Braver Angels a little bit informally. And libertarians don't have a strong party in this area, I don't think. I've looked into that. So that's about, yeah, we're trying to tap all sources. If you've got any ideas, please let us know. Okay.
One thing that's worked for this person is 15 years ago, met a friend via Spanish class. My friend had political views 180 degrees opposite to mine. Over the 15 years, we have had several heated discussions about politics, but we forced ourselves to only speak in Spanish. We are both, at best, only intermediate level Spanish. We both need to pause and look up nouns, verbs, and adjectives in the Spanish-English dictionary. This is very successful in lessening stress. We are still good friends. Yeah, you have to be bilingual though. So, but what an idea. That's great.
That is absolutely wonderful. I mean, that'll slow you down if you have to stop and look up a word. That'll slow you down, and that's what we want to do. Because when we get agitated, we talk really quickly and we lose presence to what we're talking about. Great idea. Thank you.
Okay, can you speak more to the use of debate in the old school sense, being able to speak to both sides of an issue? Is there room for debate in this environment?
I'm not the expert on the debate forum in Braver Angels, but I can find out. So whoever asked that question, come to me and I can. Okay, and Luke's going to share his experience.
So I've been to 2 of the debates online, and anybody's welcome to join those online debates that Braver Angels hosts. My experience is that it's sharing information in equally divided time allotments. So a liberal will share, a conservative will share about a specific issue. And then there's little chances to ask questions and then moving on to the next presenter, basically. So it's more of a sharing rather than like going at each other. It's more of like sharing how you feel, and if that's helpful, I hope.
Yeah, debate's all about winning, isn't it? Yeah. Do you feel that Republicans or Reds have become less balanced in view? Ours are different from 20 years ago.
Can I just have that? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Do I think that? Well, I'm basically a centrist. Okay, I have voted for both Republicans and Democrats, and my first criteria for anyone, it used to be, do they work across the aisle? That was my first criteria. Now it is, do they have ethics, and do they work across the aisle? So, but I just want to say that Luke here is a Bernie supporter. He's very blue, and I'm probably more purple. So my views on that might be a little bit different from other people. I mean, we don't know who in this room may be a conservative voter. And so we would love to hear from you if you lean red in any way. Okay.
Any more questions that anybody has?
I just want a closing exercise.
Okay, very good. I was going to say something funny. Yeah, Nancy? Why haven't we heard about this before?
Actually, Braver Angels has been on the news more and more. It's been on PBS. I think it might even have been mentioned on Jefferson Public Radio. You do hear references of Braver Angels. They're actually much more in the media now than they've been before. If you go to their website, and it's just braverangels.org, you can look at, there's all sorts of resources on the website there, and newsletters. If you go to braverangels.org/Oregon, you'll find out what they're doing in the state of Oregon, okay? We don't have a website yet because we're not an alliance, but we're working on it. That's why you have to give us your email addresses, because I can't go to the state Oregon Alliance coordinator and say, can you tell me who's in this area? I can't do that because we're not an alliance at this point, so we don't share that here.
Where in Ohio did this start?
I'm going to say Dayton, but I'm not sure.
I'm from around that territory. And Susan, you are too? Yeah, I always say it's a good place to be from. But what I think I mean mostly is this is better weather here. And I come from one of the most gerrymandered, or it was recently, the most gerrymandered district in the country. It looked like a duck. So anyway, she has an exercise that we can do, and I think that'll be a good idea. And then I have a few other comments.
Thank you, Shari. So here is the invitation to you as you leave this room today and go on with your day and go on with your week and your weekend and next week. Here is your the invitation. What? Okay, against the mic. Here's the invitation. You can accept or decline or ignore. That's fine. So next time you find yourself with somebody who has a different viewpoint than you do, and you feel yourself being triggered by it and maybe feeling strongly about it, move immediately to questions of curiosity. Can you tell me more about that? That's interesting. I'm wondering how you came to that position. Help me better understand why you feel guns are so important. You know, come from questions of curiosity. Now, this is what we call a skill drill. So it's you at this invitation is in this little exercise. You don't share what your viewpoint is. It's a skill drill just on that aspect of trying to come from questions of curiosity and finding out more about what the other person, why the other person thinks the way they do. And you will find feelings coming up inside of you, and you're going to have to manage those feelings. You're going to have to manage those feelings to take a deep breath and move to questions of curiosity. And the one question whenever I got stuck was, and I didn't know what to say next, was, tell me more about that. and so it gives you a chance to recover, gives them a chance, and then they'll just keep talking. Now, in our actual Braver Angels workshop, we do share with you how you pivot to ask permission to share with them, but I'm not asking you to do that for this exercise. This is a skill drill. So just practice that skill. So that's an invitation. It's up to all of you. Thank you very much.
So hopefully that'll work with your son-in-law at Thanksgiving. And thank you for speaking to our members and friends. We are honored and grateful to be able to learn from you and much appreciate your work. And I think you might get some advocates here. I hope so. So Leaguers, friends, and guests, thank you for coming today. Our speaker series will continue here next month. And Linda, I can't remember who the next speaker is.
It's homelessness in Lake County, and it is, I want to say David Elliott, and he's a coordinator for the services for the homeless on the street.
Did you hear that? It's about homelessness, and it's a fellow who's the coordinator of an organization that deals with homelessness on the street. He's a Lane County government official. So, okay. April 20th here. Be there or be square. Linda says that there's some food left and we have containers. So do that. Also, I wanted to mention that the we appreciate, or the facility appreciates, that we don't hog all the good parking. So try to park as far away as you can so that there are other customers for the restaurant will have a little bit of it's my brooch. It's the microphone in my brooch. So that their other customers can more easily use the facility. So anyway, stay tuned and watch our website that these two put together. Thank you very much. And any other media, our publicity person, it does Facebook and Twitter, and I doubt TikTok. Instagram. Okay. For our coming events. Plus, we'll nag you a little bit on the email. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you, and stay safe.